À, vâng, anh Bình, thực ra thì
Vâng ạ, anh có thể bắt
vâng,
đầu ạ. Anh
trong
Linh
lúc
xin.
mình chờ anh Sandor quay lại thì mình xin phép được bắt đầu. Không biết là mọi người đã nhìn thấy cái màn hình mình đang share chưa? Vì thỉnh thoảng nó cũng
Thấy
bị
rồi
trục
anh
trặc.
ạ, thấy rồi ạ.
Vâng, thì rất là thứ nhất thì rất là hân hạnh là lại được tham dự cái buổi ngày một cái buổi webinar do Ban chỉ đạo BIM quốc gia lần nữa tổ chức. Mà xin được tự giới thiệu thì bản thân mình tên là Nguyễn Hồng Minh, mình là nhân viên của công ty VN-Co. Hôm nay thì thay mặt cho công ty rất cảm ơn tất cả mọi người đã tham gia buổi hội thảo giới thiệu về chương trình Bim Manager. Về nội dung của buổi ngày hôm nay thì sẽ bắt đầu gồm có cái mini series này sẽ gồm có 3 phần, gồm có Bim Office Management, template creation là chuyên về tạo template là buổi thứ hai, và buổi thứ ba sẽ là Bim implementation. Bim implementation sẽ liên quan trực tiếp đến vấn đề về những kinh nghiệm và những kỹ thuật về những công cụ và các cái quy trình làm việc trong cái quá trình mà triển khai BIM vào thực tế. Thì đấy sẽ là thông tin ở buổi thứ ba. Trong buổi thứ nhất ngày hôm nay thì diễn giả Sandor là một chuyên gia về BIM, về cả BIM, anh ấy còn là một kiến trúc sư nữa. Sẽ giới thiệu với mọi người về những cái thông tin đầu tiên về cái việc triển khai BIM ở quy mô các cái công ty, các cái thông tin liên quan đến BIM, cách thức vận hành khi mà một công ty bắt đầu triển khai BIM thì cần làm những việc gì, cần quan tâm và nghiên cứu đến những vấn đề gì. Những vấn đề này thì anh Sandor sẽ giới thiệu bằng tiếng Anh. Trong slide của anh Sandor thì sẽ có một số cái phụ đề bằng tiếng Việt. Nếu mà các anh chị tham gia mà có bất kỳ là vấn đề gì về việc cần hiểu rõ hơn về các cái nội dung ngày hôm nay chia sẻ thì mọi người thứ nhất là có thể đặt câu hỏi trực tiếp trong buổi webinar ngày hôm nay thông qua phần question and answer. Thì bên phía ban tổ chức đã có post ở trong cái phần chat cái đường link để có thể mọi người có thể trực tiếp đặt câu hỏi cho các diễn giả. Ngoài ra thì có thể là liên hệ trực tiếp với công ty VN-Co để chúng tôi có thể hỗ trợ giải đáp. Đấy là về nội dung của chương trình. Chương trình sẽ được chia thành 2 phần. Phần thứ nhất thì anh Sandor anh sẽ giới thiệu khoảng một nửa cái nội dung, những cái phần mà sơ khởi nhất của khái niệm. Sau đấy thì chúng ta sẽ có một cái khoảng nghỉ 5 đến 10 phút. Trong cái khoảng thời gian nghỉ đấy chúng ta hoàn toàn có thể đặt các cái câu hỏi để các diễn giả có thể trả lời. Sau đấy chúng ta sẽ kết thúc với nửa phần còn lại của cái bài trình bày. Còn lại toàn bộ thời gian còn lại thì hoàn toàn có thể dùng cho cái mục đích là các cái câu hỏi và các câu trả lời giữa mọi người tham gia ngày hôm nay và các diễn giả. Và chủ yếu mình sẽ làm cái nhiệm vụ là nếu mà có các câu hỏi bằng tiếng Việt, mọi người có thể đặt câu hỏi bằng tiếng Việt hoặc trực tiếp bằng tiếng Anh. Nếu mà câu hỏi bằng tiếng Việt thì mình sẽ thay mặt cho anh Sandor, mình sẽ dịch nôm na cái câu hỏi đấy sang để anh Sandor sẽ là người trực tiếp trả lời nếu mà có thể. Vâng, thì để không làm mất nhiều thời gian hơn nữa thì xin phép được bắt đầu cái nội dung của ngày hôm nay. Xin phép đầu tiên thì xin phép được giới thiệu rất là ngắn gọn thông qua về các cái nội dung về công ty VN-Co. Rất hân hạnh được là đồng tổ chức cái buổi webinar ngày hôm nay, đồng tổ chức cái series 3 buổi về Bim Manager cùng với phía Ban chỉ đạo BIM quốc gia. Đầu tiên thì xin giới thiệu công ty của chúng tôi là VN-Co, thành lập từ năm 2007 do kiến trúc sư Nguyễn Trung Kiên đứng ra tổ chức đã thành lập. Về thông tin công ty mọi người có thể tìm hiểu được rất là kỹ ở trên website của chúng tôi là www.vlanco.vn, hoặc là có thể contact của chúng tôi qua email contact@vnco.vn. Cái công ty thì VN-Co là một công ty chuyên về tư vấn chứng nhận công trình xanh. Đấy là một trong mảng việc đầu tiên mà chúng tôi đã làm ở thị trường Việt Nam. Chúng tôi có khả năng tư vấn về rất là nhiều các cái chứng nhận công trình xanh về cả LEED, về Lotus, về H và các cái chứng chỉ khác nữa. Chúng tôi chuyên tư vấn các giải pháp với công trình hiệu năng đều nhắm đến hướng tới là Net Zero Energy Building. Là một thành viên của VGBC, tôi đã tham gia rất là nhiệt tình vào trong cái hoạt động của các dự án và các công trình ở Việt Nam. Một số khách hàng nổi bật của chúng tôi thì mọi người có thể thấy gồm có rất là nhiều những đơn vị mà có tên tuổi và phổ biến rất là phổ biến trên thị trường, ở Việt Nam, ví dụ Capital House hay Sao Thái Dương, Vigasera, hoặc là chúng tôi còn làm các dự án cho UNDP. Đây là một số đối tác của công ty Herim của Hàn Quốc hay là Obayashi Việt Nam, một công ty có nguồn gốc từ Nhật Bản. Trên màn hình là hai công trình tiêu biểu mà công ty đã tham gia và tư vấn, đó là tòa nhà North Star được chứng chỉ LEED Gold và trung tâm lưu ký chứng khoán Hoàng Quốc Việt Hà Nội. Còn đây là mô hình hình ảnh chụp của trường lên cấp Genesis, cũng là một công trình đã được tư vấn thành công, đã đạt chứng chỉ Lotus vàng trong khoảng 2 năm trước. Bên cạnh cái phần về công trình xanh thì công ty VN-Co còn là một đại lý và trung tâm đào tạo phần mềm. Chúng tôi có một số phần mềm như trên màn hình có thể thấy, ví dụ như là rõ ràng là chúng tôi làm đại lý chính hãng và phân phối cũng như đào tạo cho Graphisoft ở Việt Nam, có bộ phần mềm Graphisoft Archicad, BIMX và BIM Cloud. Thì ngoài ra chúng tôi còn có một số các phần mềm khác liên quan đến phần hiệu năng công trình như Design Builder hay là Energy Plus hoặc NVMet. Nói về Graphisoft thì Graphisoft là một thành viên của tập đoàn Nemetschek, và bên trong tập đoàn này thì hướng tới cái ngành công nghiệp, cái ngành thiết kế xây dựng các phần mềm của Nemetschek thì bao phủ tất tần tật các giai đoạn của trong một quá trình xây dựng, từ thiết kế, thi công đến vận hành công trình và bảo dưỡng. Mọi người có thể thấy được Graphisoft về đóng góp vào trong tập đoàn này với những cái phần mềm ở giai đoạn thiết kế, đó là các phần mềm về ví dụ như là Archicad, chuyên một cái công cụ BIM chuyên dụng cho vấn đề thiết kế. Thì trên màn hình là giới thiệu sơ bộ về website của Graphisoft ở Việt Nam do công ty VN-Co tổ chức. Ngoài ra thì liên quan đến phần đào tạo thì công ty VN-Co có tổ chức các khóa đào tạo về từ cơ bản đến nâng cao chuyên đề, và thậm chí là đào tạo theo yêu cầu cho tất cả các cái lĩnh vực trong vấn về sử dụng phần mềm Archicad và theo đúng tiêu chuẩn của công ty Graphisoft. Ngoài ra thì công ty còn có thể làm đại lý để cho mọi người Việt Nam có thể tham gia các khóa đào tạo chính hãng do Graphisoft tổ chức. Graphisoft thì có rất là nhiều các cái khóa học, các cái khoảng thời gian rất là linh hoạt, nên mọi người hoàn toàn nếu quan tâm hoặc là có thể tham gia để nâng cao trình độ chuyên môn của mình. Cái việc nắm vững những cái kỹ năng mới liên quan đến BIM mà được Graphisoft đào tạo trực tiếp, khi mà hoàn thành thì sẽ nhận được chứng chỉ, và chứng chỉ đấy có giá trị toàn cầu. Và ngoài việc là nâng cao kiến thức thì cái cơ hội làm việc của chúng ta cũng tăng lên rất là nhiều. Đây cũng chính là lý do vì sao mà công ty VN-Co đã hết sức cố gắng để làm việc được với Grasshopper, tổ chức ra cái buổi cái series 3 buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay để giới thiệu về những cái khái niệm. Bởi vì là cái chương trình Bim Manager chính hãng của Graphisoft thì rất là nhiều thông tin diễn ra trong khoảng 10 tuần liên tục, và cũng có chứng chỉ toàn cầu có hạn sử dụng trong rất là nhiều năm. Thế thì cái việc mà giới thiệu những cái khái niệm như vậy, những cái kiến thức như vậy trong những cái buổi webinar ngắn gọn như ngày hôm nay thì tất nhiên là mọi người có thể hiểu cho là cái lượng thông tin truyền tải nó có thể là nó sẽ là những cái ý rất là sơ khởi. Thì nếu mà mọi người có thể quan tâm sâu hơn thì có thể liên hệ với chúng tôi để có thêm chi tiết. Vâng, thì cái phần giới thiệu thì chắc là chỉ đến thế thôi ạ. Chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu ngay với cái phần trình bày, đi vào đúng trọng tâm của buổi ngày hôm nay. Hi Sandor.
Hello.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. I've just finished the introductions about our VN-Cos and a little bit about the content of the today presentations. So I would like to pass this over to you. So let's begin.
Sure. Yes. Let me try the screen sharing. Okay. So you see my PowerPoint right now, right?
Yes, I can start seeing your presentations.
Okay. Then let's get started. So hello everyone. Welcome to the session and the course. It's good to see so many sign-ups. Let me introduce myself briefly as well. So I'm Sandor from Hungary originally. I'm a customer success business partner, previously a BIM consultant with Graphisoft Asia. And in this role, I'm assisting the partners, supporting them with implementation, events, trainings, and many things that is related to their to the partnership. So let me give you also an overview on what is going to happen today and the next two sessions. Basically, we have our very own Bim Manager program with Graphisoft. And in this program, we are aiming to go through the BIM implementation on an office and a project level. And this is for all people who are interested in like architects that have technical interest, BIM managers, or owners, practice managers. If you would like to change your practice into a BIM-enabled office, then you will find the know-how in this course. It's a quite extensive course. It's a 10-week online course, and it has 3 modules. And today we're going to go through briefly the first module, which is the Bim Office Management. The next 2 are going to be more technical, which is going to be the architect template creation and the BIM project coordination. And basically, if you take the actual course, and later on you will be given details about how you can sign up as well. If you take this actual course with Graphisoft, the teachers and lecturers and experts, then you can get certified and become a Graphisoft BIM manager in the end of the program. So let's just take a look at the module of today. So the BIM Office Management itself. So this part is also taking through like 3 or 4 weeks within the overall course. So it's also quite extensive. It has live meeting, presentations, self-paced materials as well. So quite a lot of materials, documentation, handouts, sample files, free resources as well. And basically what it aims to go through is to show you the theories, a theoretical framework on implementing BIM in a practice. So we're going to focus on workflows, which are mostly referring to, or mainly referring to, the first ever BIM related standards, the ISO 19650, part 1 and part 2, and there will be a deep explanation of that also within the course. And besides that, we're also going through the role of the BIM manager and every activity there that they are involved in as part of this framework. So besides that, we're also going to go through, even today, some of the legal aspects, project setup, how to do the audits. And there are also a lot of technical involvement as well from the BIM managers. These are not going to be considered and discussed in this short course because that's also a very expensive topic. And we're also have the dedicated courses later on for this. So basically what we aim for today is to introduce the workflow, the framework, and basically, yeah, these are the things. Okay, let me move on. So I'm going to try to take you through the actual course in a compressed manner. I will have to exclude some of the parts because it's really extensive topic. So let's go first and take a look at the BIM practice. So what is the situation currently and what is the understanding of it? So first of all, the definition of BIM. There are many different organizations and parties who define BIM. So for example, the first one, Building Smart, that is an international organization and the biggest advocate of open standards and open formats, such as the IFC, for example. They say that the focus is, when it comes to BIM, the focus is on the digital representation. The BIM is more like a product. It's a data model, right? Compared to that, in the UK, the National Building Specification is more focusing on a process and the information management itself. So we're not really focusing the product itself, the model. Besides this, the UK BIM Alliance conducted interviews where it turned out that all the different stakeholders or all the interviewed experts said that it turned out that for everyone, the UK BIM level 2 that UK has means something different. So that's an interesting thing, and that is going to define the whole approach in our case. And besides that, there is also the American Institute of Architects who says that the BIM is a data model, but they are the first ones who are mentioning that it's actually not for the design and the delivery, but it's also for stimulating your construction and the operation as well. But the bottom line is that basically BIM is perceived differently depending on where you are in the process, what is the use of BIM, how long you are involved in the processes, and we definitely need to take this into consideration. So basically, what is the biggest goal here, or what is the most important thing, is that we need to define ourselves what BIM means to us. Besides this, obviously, we should not forget about the basics when we think of BIM, so that it's a digital representation of the building. You can use it throughout the life cycle of the project. You can have deep collaboration with other stakeholders. You can share the information. You can put in information. You can extract information from the model. These are all needed to be considered. And there are a lot of different dimensions of BIM. So as mentioned, we always need to clarify with all the other stakeholders, what is our expectation. Obviously 2D, 3D, we are all aware of what those dimensions mean. 4D is already including the time component, the time data in our information model. So this allows us to create sequences, for example, the construction and site preparation planning. In case of 5D, we include cost data in our information model. So that means we can use our model for cost management. And 6D includes operations and maintenance information of our assets. So these are mostly clear, but you can see in this image below that after around 6D, 7D, these things are getting a little mixed up. So there are all different kinds of understandings of what the different dimensions mean. So that's exactly why we need to clarify what we want with BIM. I also mentioned, in case of the UK, the BIM levels, or the level 2, just to have a quick understanding. Basically, level 0 BIM is not really BIM, there's no collaboration there. We have 2D CAD drawings, paper printouts, maybe electronic printouts, but there's no collaboration. In case of level 1 BIM, we already have some sort of collaboration, but it's typically 3D models or CAD work for the design, and 2D for the documentation itself. But the real thing, what we're talking about, and when we usually mean BIM, is BIM level 2 or level 2 BIM, when we have different discipline models that are federated together. And then we can use this federated model for coordination, collaboration, and interrogate it for model information as well. Level 3 BIM is already ahead of us, but it's not fully defined yet. But in that case, basically, what we would aim for is that there are not even discipline models, but there is a common data, a common database, the model, where everyone can work on the same thing. There is one single source of truth. But this is a little bit down the road. So right now, the prevailing suite is BIM level 2 in the UK. Also, if you look at the practice, there's the we need to look at the whole industry as well, and we need to see the harsh reality that the construction industry has not really been considered as one of the effective ones. So here, as you can see, the different efficiency rate growth of the different industries in the last 50 years, and we can see that the construction industry has practically remained the same, while manufacturing, agriculture has had a huge gain by utilizing new technologies. So basically what we know is that the construction industry is less efficient. Because of that, we lose a lot of money on this. It's mostly because we have processes which take much more time than they should. And that is also happening because these processes are mostly manual, and digitalization is still not as mainstream as it should be. If you look at this diagram from McKinsey and Company, that actually shows how far we are behind the other industries. And just to give you a few examples, we can see that project planning, for example, if it's at least if it's at least if it's coordinated between the site and the office, then it's still happening on paper. The investment in research and development in case of construction industry is around 1% of the revenues, whereas in case of the automotive industry and the aerospatial industry, it's 3.5 and 4.5%. So and then that's also the same in long-term investment. So in case of the construction industry, we do not tend to spend on information technology, even if the solutions are available, and even if we're not investing in technologies, even if the long-term benefits are clearly visible. So that's kind of just the nature of our industry. So obviously everybody would like to change this, and here you can see this comic that basically, as long as it's about the change, everybody realizes that there has to be a change, or in most cases we realize that there has to be the change. But when it comes to start changing, then nobody really wants to do this anymore, and there is a significant delay here. So in one hand, that's because there's a lack of standards. There are international standards, but in many places there are no local standards. In some cases, maybe the technology is still not available, or even if it's available, then hardware software is not able to support the change. And I think the biggest issue, or the biggest obstacle, could be the human factors and the mindset. So obviously people need to change. If you just think about the average employee would say that they've been working with the method for 10-20 years. So why should they change? Obviously, if that method was not good, then they would not be using it for so long, right? But there are also many other human factors, priorities changing, and also, for example, the social map, the relation between the employees. That's also very important. I'm going to mention this later as well. So, but let's just move on. That, let's say we are already ready to do the changes, and if we have a BIM-enabled office, then we need to have an orchestrator for this whole implementation and this whole process, and that is the Bim Manager. So let's take a look at what they are actually doing, because it's not just the Bim Manager that is here, but there will be some other roles as well. And even if you look at the Bim Manager, then we really need a superhero here, because they are involved in so many things, starting from the strategies of the company, the BIM strategy, the documentation of these strategies, the implementation of these, management, managing the teams, ITs, managing the project itself. They are involved in supporting the architects, the IT, or at least that's something that goes both ways, but they really need to work closely together. They also need to be responsible for the know-how, training the people, onboarding new people, keeping up all the existing people, constantly developing them. And obviously there is also the actual work on the projects, the coordination with and the data exchange, information exchange with the consultants and other stakeholders. So there are a lot of things, and they work together with the whole project team, but there are two new roles that they are really closely work together, and those are the model manager and a documentation manager and this is on a team level. But if you look at the big picture, then we can see that on a project level where we have different teams, then we have another role as well. And basically in project level, ISO 19650 is introducing the project information management function, which also needs to have a dedicated role, which is the information manager. And typically this can be well, either a third party, a BIM consultant, or someone from the BIM department in the company. But it can also be the BIM manager who is involved in the overall information management throughout the project. So what needs to be taken care into account when it comes to BIM implementation? I already mentioned some of these factors, and here you can see the human factor, the changing priorities, the social map, as I mentioned. So, for example, yeah, in case of the social map, if you just think of, let's say, in one of our case studies, we had the company was using ArchiCAD on an okay level, but they were not using it to its full potential, and they were not implementing BIM to its full potential. And then it turned out that the reason because of this was that the champion that was driving this whole thing was close to retirement. So, you know, they didn't really put in too much effort into the implementation. Also, everyone considered that person to be out of the company. So why should they really follow him? And this is just one example. There could be other cases when people just cannot work together. So as part of the planning, in case of these BIM implementation processes, one of the goals could be to draw a social map as well. So in general, you can see that these are the 5 stages what we can consider when it comes to BIM implementation: initiation, planning, mobilization, transition, and the actual success part when everything goes on smoothly already. And in all of these phases, we need efforts from both of the business and from the consultants as well. In the actual course, there will be quite a lot of details about these. So maybe I'm not going to go through all of them, maybe just the first one. So in the initiation phase, for example, the goals, we need to set out what do we want to achieve with BIM. In case of the BIM processes assessment, we need to identify the current processes, what can be used further on, what needs to be changed. Infrastructure assessment, what is the current setup, IT setup, how can it support the change in the new workflows. Methodology, how we're going to do this implementation. Risk management, like those bottlenecks, any obstacles that can come up during the implementation. It can be the previous social interactions and the human factors. It can be anything that is related to budgeting, but it can also be even small things like soon there's going to be holiday season, or simply just there are not enough projects and there is not a suitable pilot project to start the BIM implementation on. Similarly, organizational assessment is looking at this whole process from a human resources point of view. Can we have the right teams put together? Do we have enough resources for that? Can we afford the trainings, for example? And in the end, we should also have a kickoff meeting where we communicate all the upcoming changes to all the relevant stakeholders. So there are a lot of things. Maybe this was just the first thing. Besides that, there are a lot of additional aspects in all 5 of these phases. So you can learn more about these at the actual course. Now I will just have to move on with this. Obviously, when we have the implementation in the pipeline, we need to have some playbook. We need to have some rules. How should we implement it? What should we implement? And this is when standards come into play. And standards usually define processes related to project stages. They usually come with templates, with supporting documents, and many of them may even include some modeling guidelines as well. In case of BIM, we're mostly referring to ISO 19650 Part 1 and Part 2. Which describe the overall concepts and principles for all the stakeholders. And they also set out specific requirements for the delivery of the projects. Besides this, we have a lot of national standards, which are usually stripped down versions and adapted versions, localized versions of the international standards in many cases. Sometimes they are slightly different or more or less different. I think here what we can bring as good examples is again the UK BIM Level 2 suite, Norway's mandatory open BIM communication, and for example the BIM mandatory BIM submission in Singapore. Let me just go through a little bit of some of the principles in ISO 19650. Again, these will be introduced in details at the actual course. First of all, what is ISO is introducing is, as I mentioned, is the information management function, and there the information requirements at the different stages for the different stakeholders, for the different levels of business, and how it affects the deliverables. So for example, the first one is the organizational information requirements. It's a supporting document, OIR, which sets out the overall goals of the organization. And this material contributes to the project information requirements, the PIR, which sets out how or explains how particular projects will respond to these organizational requirements. The OIR is also partially included in the asset information requirements, where we actually go down into the level of the individual products and assets in the building and define how those assets will contribute to the organizational requirements. These two, the PIR and the AIR, will actually contribute to the exchange information requirements, EIR, which is basically setting out the managerial, commercial, and technical aspects of producing the project information. So how we're going to what is the information needed to be delivered in the project. And so the project information model is already something what we can consider as the product, like the BIM model and its documentation. And the asset information model can be considered, let's say, an as-built model, which includes the information for the long-term strategic or the day-to-day maintenance of our project or any of these asset management processes. There's another concept which is, or another principle that is related to the information checking. Basically, there are two parties: the appointing party, which can be the employer, owner, client, and there are lead appointed parties like the architect or other consultants. And the information exchange is, so the employer is setting what information is required, what are the requirements. The lead appointing party is going to provide these, but before providing these, they have to verify that it's actually responding to the requirements. And once it's received, then the appointing party has to verify that and approves that. So basically, this part is setting out or formalizes the way how the information should be checked, shared, released, and approved. There are two other ones, two other principles. I'm not going to go into details about that. The first one is basically refers to the environment where the information should be shared and checked and approved. So this is usually a common data environment, and this becomes contractual. And then the fourth one is this diagram about the information delivery cycle, which is showing that there is always, the information is growing throughout the stages, and there are always key decision points where we have to do a submission. And that's really important, because at those points we need to do these decision points have to be coordinated as well. So it's closely related to the coordination process. Okay, so besides that, obviously, we have another level, which is the office and the project specific standards. And obviously, whenever we come up with these, then we need to be sure that we are aligned with the international and the national standards. And any workflows, any processes that we have, we should be including in our company BIM manual, right? So there are just a few questions here for you to think about. What should be included, what the BIM manual should be referring and responding to. I cannot go into further details right now, but I think it's a good thing to think about these as well. In the actual course, you will have a whole session about this, and can find out more details about it. Okay, when it comes to the project teams themselves, then ISO also defines how a project team looks, or how it is set up. So here you can see this diagram where we are differentiating appointing parties in the center with A. Then there are the lead appointed parties, which could be the architects and the consultants, and there would be further appointed parties at C, which would be additional teams. The collection of the appointed parties are considered to be the task teams. So you can see on their number 3, those are task teams. B and C together, those would be the delivery teams who are delivering the information, delivering the product. And then this whole thing altogether is the actual project team. So the involvement of these parties is also an interesting thing, and ISO in that case is also defines this, how much these parties are involved in the processes. So in the course you will find these diagrams which show the different stages and activities, and there is a color coding on how deeply the different parties are involved in these processes. So for example, the appointing party, the employer, is involved in the beginning heavily, first stage, second, and then the 8th. So that's the assessment and need, invitation to tender, project closeout. This is where the appointing party is heavily involved. And they are involved in the other stages as well, but not so much. So green is light involvement, orange is medium involvement. Lead appointed party is only involved in the tender response, starting from number 3, as you can see with red. But in the first 2 activities, they are not involved at all. So that's why that's great. And then obviously they are part of the whole process very heavily after that, mobilization itself and the actual delivery. Right. So and then the appointed party is more involved in the delivery and the collaboration, because those are those guys who are brought into the process by the lead appointed party. There are a lot of details in these and actual processes, what these parties are doing. It also depends on the project delivery itself, whether it's a traditional design, bid and build, or design and build, or an integrated delivery. So more details about this on the course. Maybe now we can take a little break. Okay, I know that this is very intense and there's a lot of things to digest. So maybe we can take a little break, 5 minutes. If you have any questions, then Min is going to help me out with those. So I hand it over back to Min for a while.
Thank you, Sandro. You did so good as normal. Thưa mọi người, thì là cái như mình có giới thiệu ngay từ đầu, thì những cái nội dung mà anh Sandro vừa mới chia sẻ với người, nó chỉ giống như là cái việc mà chúng ta mới cào qua cái bề mặt của như một cái bãi biển ấy ạ. Tức là cái kiến thức ở phía bên dưới nó có rất là nhiều, thì thực sự là cần rất là nhiều thời gian để mà có thể nắm vững được các cái kiến thức này và áp dụng vào trong cái việc thực hành sao cho nó hiệu quả. Như đầu chương trình thì mình cũng có nói chuyện với cả anh Bình của bên ban chỉ đạo BIM quốc gia, cũng nói chuyện vui thôi, là cái việc áp dụng BIM thì vào công việc ấy, thì nếu mà mình áp dụng một cách bình thường, tức là từ năng lực nhận thức của bản thân mình áp dụng ấy, thì cũng là một cách cũng có thể đạt được những hiệu quả nhất định. Tuy nhiên là để mà áp dụng được cái công nghệ và cái quy trình làm việc mới này vào mà nó thực sự hiệu quả, nó thay đổi được cái quy trình làm việc mà chúng ta có thể vẫn đang làm rất là thành công. Thì nếu mà áp dụng cái này vào mà để thành công được như cũ và hơn, thì cần phải có một cái sự đầu tư thời gian cho việc học tập và nghiên cứu cũng là tương đối ạ. Mọi người có thể là có câu hỏi liên quan đến các cái nội dung này thì có thể là đặt câu hỏi trực tiếp luôn thông qua cách thức ban tổ chức đã thông báo. Mọi người có thể mở cái phần chat của phần Zoom này lên, và ở trong đấy thì ban tổ chức đã có cung cấp cái đường link đến cái chỗ mọi người có thể đặt câu hỏi trực tiếp. Ở cái buổi hôm nay thì chúng ta sẽ có khoảng 2 tiếng đồng hồ tất cả. Thì trong đấy thì cái phần của diễn giảng sẽ chiếm khoảng 1/2 thời gian. Bởi vì tại sao như vậy? Bởi vì là bên ban tổ chức nghĩ là với cái lượng thông tin tóm tắt như này thì có thể là mọi người có thể có rất là nhiều câu hỏi, thế nên là cũng đã dành cho một cái lượng thời gian tương đối dài cho phần đặt câu hỏi. Thì cũng mong mọi người có thể đặt nhiều câu hỏi cho diễn giả. Bởi vì anh Sandro ngoài việc làm thường xuyên tham gia vào cái công việc chuyên môn của anh ấy, thì anh ấy tức là công việc là làm diễn giả và đi hỗ trợ các cái nước ở khu vực Đông Nam Á, thì anh ấy còn là một người thực sự là làm nghề, nên là anh ấy có tương đối là nhiều kinh nghiệm trong cái việc qua các cái sự vụ thực tế, qua các cái dự án thực tế để mà có thể trả lời các câu hỏi của các anh các chị ở đây. Thì các anh các chị có câu hỏi thì xin đừng ngần ngại gì, xin cứ đặt câu hỏi vào trong thông qua cái đường link ban tổ chức đã gửi qua phần chat của Zoom. Thì trong cái phần giới thiệu vừa rồi thì cũng có một số bạn đã trực tiếp đặt câu hỏi cho mình, thì là là những cái nội dung mà anh Sandro vừa chia sẻ ấy, thì là nguồn gốc lấy từ đâu. Thì xin được chia sẻ một tí về cái phần này, tranh thủ cái lúc nghỉ giải lao này luôn để mọi người có thể quay lại với tiếng Việt, tiếng mẹ đẻ của chúng ta. Thì cái rất là nhiều thông tin mà anh Sandor đã chia sẻ, ví dụ như là thông tin liên quan đến cái phần cuối cùng mà trước khi chúng ta nghỉ đây thì về phần appointing party, lead appointed party hay là mấy cái sơ đồ đấy thì đấy là tất cả những cái thông tin chính thống từ tiêu chuẩn ISO 19650 và 19650 và các phần. Thì hiện giờ cái tiêu chuẩn đấy nó có tổng cộng là 5 phần, 19650-1 đến 19650-5. Tuy nhiên nếu mọi người nghiên cứu kỹ thì có thể thấy là cái tiêu chuẩn đấy nó không công bố theo cái thứ tự lần lượt của cái con số ấy đâu ạ. Nó có 1, 2 trước, xong rồi khi nó lại có 5, có 3, có một phần là chưa có, ví dụ như vậy. Thì các cái thông tin mà anh Sandor vừa chia sẻ thì nếu mà mọi người quan tâm sâu hơn, đặc biệt là về cái phần cái team làm dự án, how to set up cái team đấy, thì có rất là nhiều thông tin bổ ích ở trong cái tiêu chuẩn quốc tế ISO đấy, về thế nào là appointing party, thế nào là lead appointed party, thế nào là các cái mục đấy. Thì Sandor, can you go back a couple of slides to the slide where you showing the different involvement of the party into the project? Yes,
this one.
Yeah. Vâng, cái sơ đồ mà các anh các chị có thể thấy ở trên màn hình có appointing party ở cái phần 1 là bên khai thác thông tin, thông thường sẽ là ở bên chủ đầu tư hay chủ dự án, thì họ sẽ tham gia vào nhiều giai đoạn khác nhau của cái quá trình, của các cái giai đoạn khác nhau của dự án. Thì có thông thường ở đây theo tiêu chuẩn ISO 19650 thì hiện giờ là người ta định nghĩa ra 8 giai đoạn khác nhau. Thì anh Sandor cũng đã giới thiệu với mọi người là mỗi một cái vai trò của cái vị trí này, appointing party hay appointed party hay là lead appointed party, thì sẽ tham gia vào các cái giai đoạn dự án theo cái mức độ khác nhau. Có những giai đoạn họ không tham gia, ví dụ như lead appointed party họ không tham gia vào giai đoạn 1, giai đoạn 2 là cái giai đoạn assessment và need, và hay là cái giai đoạn invitation to tender. Thế nhưng mà họ lại tham gia rất là sâu vào trong cái giai đoạn tiếp theo. Thì tất cả những cái thông tin này anh Sandor anh ấy đã lấy trực tiếp, kể cả những cái sơ đồ như thế này là cũng là trực tiếp từ cái tiêu chuẩn ISO 19650. Thì có thể thấy được là trong cái giai đoạn đầu của việc ứng dụng BIM vào trong làm việc thì cái việc phải tìm hiểu, phải nắm rõ về cái tiêu chuẩn quốc tế ISO này là một cái điều hết sức là quan trọng. Sandor, can you go back another couple of slides, please, where you showing the repository of the information?
Which one again?
The information repository.
Yeah.
No, not this one. Yes, this one. Thì ở trong cái đây cũng là các cái slide theo nằm. Yeah, no, the one after.
Okay, I think it's lagging, so that's why.
Okay, yeah.
This 24, one. Number 24.
All right, thanks. Thì ở trong các cái slide này thì có thể thấy được là cái tiêu chuẩn này nó nói rất là nhiều về thông tin. Tức là trong cái tiêu chuẩn BIM này thì ngay cái trong cái chữ BIM nó đã có cái chữ information rồi, cái chữ Y ở trong chữ BIM đấy là information, building information modeling. Thì cái chữ, bởi vì là cái thông tin nó rất là nhiều như vậy, thế nên là cái việc mà quản lý thông tin như ở trong cái đồ thị ở cái biểu đồ ở phía bên tay trái đây thì nó là một cái hết sức là quan trọng. Nó chia ra các cái khu vực để mà lưu trữ, để mà sắp xếp thông tin, để sao cho là cái thông tin nó được chia sẻ giữa các cái thành viên của dự án, nó được thông suốt, nó được nhanh nhất. Có rất là nhiều thứ rất là hay khi mà áp dụng BIM. mà bản thân mình được cũng được là các anh chị mà đã ứng dụng BIM rồi chia sẻ lại. Ví dụ như là một số người thì là trong một dự án thì có bên kiến trúc và bên làm MEP. Thế thì trước kia thì bên MEP luôn luôn phải ngồi chờ cho đến khi mà mô hình kiến trúc đã tương đối là hoàn thiện thì bắt đầu mới có thể bắt tay vào công việc của mình. Thế tuy nhiên nếu mà ứng dụng mô hình quy trình BIM vào trong quá trình làm việc ấy, thì ngay ở trong những cái giai đoạn rất là sớm của quá trình hình thành mô hình do bên kiến trúc thực hiện ấy, thì bên MEP cũng có thể bắt tay vào công việc của mình. Thế nên là cái việc mà chúng ta các nhóm làm việc có thể phối hợp với nhau từ rất là sớm, phối hợp nhuần nhuyễn, chia sẻ thông tin mà không bị trùng lặp, không bị thừa, thì nó cũng khiến cho cái hiệu quả công việc được tăng lên, đồng thời là cái thời gian làm dự án hoàn toàn có thể phải giảm đi nếu chúng ta có cái sự phân chia công việc và chia sẻ thông tin nó được gọi là hoàn thiện. Cái việc để mà hoàn thiện thế này thì nó đòi hỏi về cái việc là tổ chức quản lý, về cái lập kế hoạch cho việc chia sẻ thông tin này rất là nhiều. Thì đấy chính thì là những cái mà chúng ta đấy là những phần mà ở trong cái giai đoạn đầu của dự án thì cái người làm manager cần phải quan tâm và để tổ chức ngay từ đầu, tránh cái việc mà chúng ta vừa làm vừa tổ chức để dẫn đến là nó sẽ dẫn đến những cái khó khăn và sai sót, dẫn đến là cái hiệu quả của việc ứng dụng BIM trong cái quy trình làm việc nó sẽ giảm đi rất là nhiều. Thì đấy là một số cái thông tin mà bản thân em bởi vì là cũng đã trải qua cái khóa đào tạo của Bim Manager của hãng, thì đây là những cái điểm mà trong cái quá trình mà đi tham gia cái khóa đào tạo đấy thì cũng được các cái giảng viên của họ nhấn mạnh rất là nhiều, vì nó cũng làm những cái gì nó như kiểu là cốt lõi của cái câu chuyện. Đấy là cái phần mà chia sẻ thông tin và làm sao cho nó thật là hiệu quả để mà tăng cái hiệu suất công việc, và mà người ta luôn luôn nhấn mạnh là cái việc để chia sẻ thông tin để cho hiệu quả thì cần phải có kế hoạch, cần phải có cái sự chuẩn bị, và một phần nào đấy cần phải có kinh nghiệm của người làm quản lý để sao cho cái việc triển khai lập kế hoạch đấy nó được hiệu quả và hiệu quả nhất. Thì đấy là một số cái chia sẻ. Sandor, would you like to answer a quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the audience today is asking a question. You presented two roles for the BIM Manager and BIM Information Manager in the BIM department of the company. The scope of work of a BIM manager is very broad. So how should the BIM department organize and structure the smaller internal departments according to different functions to optimize the coordinating of the project participation and management of the research and development strategy of the company? You can actually look at this in the chat. It's the latest question.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's a quite long and complex question. I'm just reading it again.
Well, if it's too long, then we will answer it later on, because I think the break is almost over.
Yes, maybe let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me just go to. Okay. So the next thing is about checking our project. So running project audits is the next step in the process, and there are a lot of responsibilities here. So basically, what we need, the most important thing, what we need to focus on is that this activity should be more proactive. So we should be preventing the issues from happening instead of trying to fix them after. Obviously, once they happen, then we need to fix them. But the best is to avoid them and prevent them from happening. So to achieve that, we would definitely rely on our BIM manuals and the documentation of the processes. should have a template because that can make our deliveries consistent. It can include automation processes. We should do trainings and all these audits should be also ad hoc and regular as well. And there are also a few aspects here. Let me just move on with those, because I want to show you who should be taking these checks and when and what kind of checks they should be taken, just briefly. So there are 4 kinds of audits or small checks that we can do. First is a visual check, when we just want to verify the correctness of the model, no unwanted elements, no misplaced elements, things like this. This is purely visual and manual. There will be the interference check, which is a collision detection, and it's more about how different elements are clashing, and when we do the federation, for example. The standards check is more about compliance with the prevailing rules, or for example, seeing, checking whether the naming conventions in our file and project, the classifications, layers are all complying with the standards or responding to that. And there would be also the information check, when we check the correctness of the information. Is the information provided? Is it correct? Is the format is the expected one? So basically there are these 4 checks, and there are 3 participants who will be carrying out these checks. So one responsible team can be the task team, for example, the architect, then the lead designer, and there could also be the project information manager. So except for checking for the information, all the other checks should be run by the task team and the lead designer. So you can see that the lead designer is more responsible for the design, so they are not going to check the standards no matter what, basically, in this case. So the lead designer would always check what is related to the design and the correctness of the model. The task team would check the standards as well, and depending on where they are in the stage, they would either occasionally check the information. So for example, here in the middle of the change, the middle of the stage when there's a file exchange, then ad hoc, probably not too regular, but still every now and then they would do some information check on their own as well. And when the stage is completed, then when they actually do a planned check. And this is also when the project information manager comes into the picture. Obviously, even in the earlier phase or in the earlier progress of the stage, he can be involved in a lighter amount, let's say. So to conclude just quickly as well, so what can we do to minimize the issues? So as I mentioned here before, the development of the BIM manual is the key thing, because that is going to be the reference for everyone in the company. So it's it can include like kind of user guides to different tools as well, which is always good to have. But the goal and the focus should be on the workflows. So if an employee looks up the BIM manual because they run into a certain problem, then they find the guidance there how they should tackle that problem. The analysis of record and record of deliverables, that's basically a collection of the typical deliverables, which can be different to stages, can be one for different projects. So it's like an example set of deliverables. So again, it shows clearly what information is delivered, usually what is the manner, how it is delivered, what is the visual representation of the deliverables. So again, this can be used as a common reference. Obviously, the ArchiCAD template, as mentioned, it can really enhance the consistency in the deliverables. It can include automatic quality assurance methods and all kinds of other automated functionalities can be included as well. Trainings, that's very important. Keep everyone up to date. And when we do these trainings, they have to be really relevant. Use a project type that is relevant to the practice, because if it's something that people cannot relate to, then it's hard to learn it. So, but that's also part of the process. Obviously, stage reviews before the end of the stages to go through the checking mechanism, all these above checks, and also to compare if the necessary information is really delivered. In the process, and it was not mentioned before, there is a design responsibility matrix, which is setting out who is responsible for certain parts of the design. And in this case, we need to check if that information has been delivered by those particular people or not, or stakeholders. The documentation content, that's more of a manual process. It's basically once we have the deliverables, then it's like the standards check. So revision codes, status codes, technical check, just to see the accuracy, the completeness of the documents. This is really have to be manual, unfortunately. So that's why it has to be really well documented in the BIM manual so that everybody knows when and what needs to be checked and how. Legal part, we don't really mention this, but it can be a huge problem if there is a confusion or misunderstanding that leads to some disputes. So obviously we're not lawyers ourselves, so it's always good to consult a lawyer, but we have some ideas what are the specific parts which need to be clarified, otherwise they could bring some problems to us. So here you can see a few examples in the list, but I think probably the most important one is the bottom three related to the BIM process, the documentation, and the project and the client considerations. So one of the most common things that can cause an issue is, again, the understanding of BIM. So the definition of BIM, as you saw before, is open to different interpretation by everyone. So just by the owner saying that we would like to have BIM is not enough. But in many cases, we don't have more than that. So that's why it needs to be clearly defined, actual requirements, BIM uses. This is why we have the exchange information requirements, for example, because that's defining what information needs to be delivered by the project. And since I mentioned the exchange information requirements, that already takes us to the BIM documentation. So another common issue is related to these supporting documents, the asset information requirement, exchange information requirements, project information requirements, and also another thing which I haven't mentioned yet, the BIM Execution Plan, which is also setting out how we're going to deliver what needs to be delivered. So the BEP is coming from the consultant, coming from the practice. So there are a lot of supporting documents, but what happens if we deviate from these documents? Are these contractually binding? Do we have obligations, or what is the legal state of these documents? And the last thing is about the deliverables that usually that's given that we can deliver a native or a third-party format to the employer, and that's an editable model. But what we're not mentioning is the license of this model. Are they allowed to further use this model? Can they pass it on to another consultant, let's say when it comes to a renovation or a refurbishment or for any other modifications? Or maybe it's the only thing that they are allowed to do, or what they have a license for, is to extract the existing information that is related to the asset management. Well, we need to all define these in advance. Well, in the UK, many of the contract providers have templates, BIM templates or sections related to BIM incorporated in their templates, which can be a great help. And also throughout the course, you can get a lot of materials collected in this topic. These are mostly from the UK, but they can be really nicely adopted in local situations because the issues are more or less the same, and the considerations are more or less the same everywhere. All right, so let's say that these were the preparation parts, so we can actually move on to how we're going to collaborate with the other stakeholders. And when it comes to collaboration, we need to differentiate, or we need to introduce the BIM-based collaboration and the open BIM-based collaboration. So obviously, in case of BIM, what we would like to achieve is that we have a good process, we have a good workflow. BIM is not related to the tool, and we would like to make sure that every participant can use the tool that they are the best with, they are most efficient with. There are a lot of restrictions in the sense that maybe in certain regions, geographical locations, you only have a certain solution, or any kind of requirements can come up, which will eventually bring in different types of tools. So in order to come up with a solution, we would be thinking about open BIM, when everyone can use any tool that they want. And obviously there are also a lot of uses for BIM. So again, depending on where you are working in the project, or what is the purpose of using BIM, there are different details, different deliverables for all the stakeholders. So here you can see the diagram, just bringing up a few solutions throughout the different stages and a few of the BIM uses throughout the stages. And again, since we're talking about a close collaboration between the stakeholders, we would want to achieve that the communication between these packages is as seamless as possible. So the backbone of this process here, you can see from our perspective, is definitely Archicad and BIMX with the light blue. Those are our solutions. And we have other solutions where we can have native connections or direct links, like with the Rufus and Rhino and Grasshopper, or for example, ArchiFM in case of the operation phase. But there are all the other solutions where we want to provide a connection through an open format, which is the industry standard IFC. And when it comes to the actual work, this is the coordination cycle that we're going to go through. So the stage always starts with a model preparation. And once the preparation is done, we did these little audits, information check, geometry checks. We export it to the different disciplines. Those disciplines will import it, federate it, do their own checks, coordination, collision detection, and then they are going to communicate the issues to the relevant parties. And once the parties get this information, they fix their models and the whole cycle starts again. So this is a very, very frequently happening cycle. It's a very much of an iterative process. So it has to be definitely smooth. And what are the methods that we can use here? Well, we can always have a closed format, a native format when we have a native file. But again, as I mentioned, there will always be someone who has a different solution and who cannot switch to a dedicated software package. So on the long run, having a closed format will not work. So that's why we are voting for Open BIM, and the only open format, IFC. And basically, if you have this open format and you're using open standards, then that's when you achieve Open BIM itself. Technically, how this works, we're going to go into a lot of details in the third session, the BIM project coordination. Maybe just to highlight a few things that in case of OpenBIM, we have three terms that are going to be really important. First of all, the format IFC, which is storing the data, storing the information. Then the model view definitions, which are really going to be important to translate the processes into technical requirements. And these are the settings which allow us to filter the information that we're exchanging. So we're only sending the relevant information to every stakeholder. And the third one is also another open format, the BCF, and I'm going to mention these later on as well today too. BCF is a BIM collaboration format that's for communicating the issues once the model is federated. And there are a lot of OpenBIM uses and a few principles. So during the course, you will be able to see these diagrams and description and explanation on how the different parties participate in the different stages, how they coordinate and how they communicate between each other. So you can see the small icons of IFC for the data exchange, model exchange, information exchange, and you can see the BCF icon about the communication of these issues. And what is really interesting here is that you can see that there are the phases on top, there are the stakeholders on the left side, but this whole thing is not related to a timeline. So basically, this really shows that BIM is used throughout the entire life cycle of the project. Right. Okay, moving on, there's another principle that we need to consider is that, especially when you can see these dialogues here from Archicad, setting up our model export for different stakeholders, we should not consider softwares and set settings specifically for softwares. Instead of that, we should consider BIM uses. So if the BIM use is coordination, then we should set up the export for coordination only, coordination itself. And obviously this, to make it more seamless, we need to do a little preparation beforehand. And sometimes depending on the software packages we're working together or where we are sending our model, we might have to come up with certain workarounds to make or certain solutions to make this exchange seamless. And then maybe we have to differentiate methods and workflows. Again, these are the ones that should be documented in a BIM manual. So here are a few examples. So purpose-based exchanges can be typically these three: coordination and data, which means the 3D geometry and the information. Coordination only is like referencing as well. So basically to just take a look at someone else's model and use it as a reference. And also with new IFC versions, we now are talking about design transfer more and more, when it means that you're also transferring your delivery to someone else. You hand it over to another designer. As mentioned, we only want to transfer the relevant information only. So it means, for example, in case of a structural engineer, when we're talking about the walls, we should include the structural function and renovation status, maybe the type of material that we're using, but we don't need necessarily include like the color or what type of finishes we have on that wall. And we need to make sure the model is organized properly. We have classifications, layers set up. So when the structural engineer, for example, is looking at the model, they can easily find similar elements or interrogate the model for any kind of information and reuse that information as well. Again, this is a very extensive topic, and there will be a lot more about this at the third mini course as well, and also at the actual course. Even in this first part, the actual course has a lot to say. One of the sessions is dedicated to this part. Teamwork, that part is actually referring to our internal work. So how do we work together with our colleagues within the practice? And in case of teamwork, Graphisoft has its own teamwork solution, which is called Bim Cloud. And basically the goal here is that we can work on the same project at the same time. It's a cloud-based design hub, which means that all other stakeholders can connect to it and work on materials there. They can access the materials as well. And from a technical point or from an implementation point of view, you can have a very, very custom version of your own. If you have the related IT knowledge, for example. But even if you're a small practice, then you can use it as a service and subscribe to it as a zero IT solution, where you don't have to do additional investments for it. So when it comes to teamwork, again, maybe just a few things to think about the planning. So why do we want to share projects? Can we physically differentiate project parts and then combine them together with hot links, for example, or we can really work on the same content together with Bim Cloud, or maybe we combine the two together. How many projects we have? What is the expected peak capacity? How many users do we have? How are we going to manage these users? What are the different roles people have on the project? Do we have to set up permissions and restrict access for certain roles? What is the current status of knowledge? What kind of project sizes we have? How complex they are? A lot of things. So I think these probably you also come up with these questions when you look into an implementation. But it's always good to look at them in advance. Okay, last thing is actually about the tools that we're using, right? Because that's one thing that we know the process, we know what to implement, we have our project team setups, we have our Graphisoft tools supporting the process. We have the teamwork, but definitely, as I mentioned before in the Open BIM part, we need to look into other applications as well. And maybe it's not just that someone else, another consultant is working with these applications, but even within our teams, we need to link the collaborations into our workflow. So really just briefly, one of the great things we have is Rhino and Grasshopper live link. So basically the problem usually, not just with the design process, but in case of many of the other processes in our project, is that we always have to wait for a phase to finish so that we can start the next phase. And in case of this, when it comes to the design phase specifically, before we can put in information into our model, if we're not using a BIM process, to be able to collect information, produce information, we always need to have the design phase finished. In case of BIM process, that's easier because we can already put in information from the very early phases, but still in most of the cases we still have to wait for a design phase to finish. So if we can have an integrated workflow in this case, then as dynamically we're changing the design, the information can already reside in the project. So this is when the live link from Rhino and Grasshopper comes into the picture. Basically what this means is whatever geometries we generate with Rhino and Grasshopper, those will automatically be translated to actual BIM elements And in the BIM tool, in this case in ArchiCAD, we can already add the information to them, even in the very, very early phase, even when they are just part of some conceptual algorithmic design. So we can already create quantity takeoffs from these elements. We can already create documentation sets from these elements, presentations. It's really a great thing. Another one that I would mention, and I also mentioned it in the diagram before, is Deliverables, which is a requirement management tool. So basically, usually the problem is that all the client requirements are not really documented well, or they are fragmented all over in case of the project. So usually the design starts, and then we check if the design is matching the requirements, but then maybe there were already some updates. So it's really hard to keep the requirements and the product synchronized. So instead of that, we're changing the workflow. So instead of a model-driven design, we should be thinking of a data-driven design. So what Deliverables does is that we can capture the client requirements from, let's say, the exchange information requirements, and we can translate that into a structured data. So we can create a database in Deliverables, and we can create the equivalent of that database within ArchiCAD. So in this case, the ArchiCAD data and the data from the client's requirements can always be kept synchronized. So for example, in this case, when let's say we have a hospital and we would want to put objects into the wards, into the rooms, the designer doesn't have to think, because the requirement comes from the database. And basically we have a live link between these two solutions. And thanks to this live link, the objects will automatically be placed into the room. So the designer doesn't have to think about which type of beds they need or how many they need in a particular room. The number of objects will already be placed based on the database from the client requirements. And all what the designer has to do is just arrange them within the room, basically. So it's a really nice and clear way of managing the requirements. Another tool which we really love is Solibri Office. You can see Solibri within the process. So Solibri, previous name was Solibri Model Checker. It's used to federate the models and do the visual checks and do code compliance checks, or do any kind of custom checks as well. So you can set your own internal checks as well. Or for example, there are Kobe extensions for Solibri in their website. And that's checking the information if it's fulfilling the Kobe requirements. Kobe is the data deliverable in the UK, US for asset management, basically. So you can do visual checks, you can do clash detection, you can do code compliance checks, you can do your custom checks, and you can create issues from these, and you can create presentations from these that can be communicated to the different stakeholders using the BCF, the BIM collaboration format as a transferring media, basically. So yeah, I mentioned the BCF as well in case of the Open BIM uses. There's also another great tool which comes into picture, and that's Kubus BIM Collab, which is a cloud-based issue management platform. So when you have these BCF messages, BCF files, you can read them in most of the BIM authoring tools, either natively or with an add-in or any kind of extension. But in many cases, you don't want to have the whole model open. So you just want to have an overview of the issues, and you might still want to add comments, change responsibilities, change stages, and the states and completeness of these issues. So basically, with BIM Collab, you can read all the BCF files, and you can manage them. And also in case of ArchiCAD, we have a BIM Collab ArchiCAD connection, so you can directly work with these from ArchiCAD as well. This is an extra convenience on top of the system, but all in all, the system itself can be used with all kinds of collaborating softwares because it's handling the issues, only the BCF issues. And last but not least, I would mention the common data environments, which is basically the collective term to describe the platform that is the project repository. So you can have the project files, you can have documents, drawings, models, other supporting documents, anything that is part of the BIM workflows. Usually these common data environments have their own IFC viewers. So here, that's also a key thing. What you need to think of that is also using an independent platform, an open platform, an open file format that they are mostly viewing IFC files. And in many of these, you can do quick or simple model federation and information queries. So this is also available in many cases until a limited extent. Even within the Nemetschek group, which is the where Graphisoft belongs to, we have our own common data environment coming from Allplan, which is called BIM Plus. And some of these common data environments also support the export of COBie data, let's say from the models again, which is the asset data deliverable. So these common data environments are usually owned by the client, so they have to set it up, they have to provide access for the consultants, and eventually everyone should be brought on board. There are also a lot of other solutions in the actual course. You can hear about Cloud Compare, which is to manage point clouds, Bluebeam, which is a very nice documentation management software with very nice markup solutions, also has a direct link with ArchiCAD. You can also hear about Twinmotion, which is a live render and which we also have a direct link to. So there are a lot of amazing things, but I think this is all what we can cover in such a short course as what we have today. So that brings me to the end of it, and I think now I just need to conclude again about the overall course, that how can you sign up and participate. So I hope you liked what you see or what you saw until now, and I'm really hopeful that you are eager to learn more and learn the details. So basically how it goes is that you need to contact Will & Co, namely Miss Lynn, at the phone number on the screen or the email. And at this point, we also offer a discount to the first 5 sign-ups to the course. And basically, once you're enrolled, then you can sign in to learn.graphisoft.com. I even suggest you to visit the portal without signing up for a BIM Manager program. If you want to learn more about ArchiCAD, there are free materials as well. If you're already one of our existing ArchiCAD users, then you will find all kinds of ArchiCAD trainings there. And if you're one of our existing customers, then most of them are free for you at this stage. So I definitely recommend everyone to take a look at the learn.graphisoft.com portal. because eventually this is where you can take the course after signing up. So as I mentioned, the course has a lot of self-paced materials, presentations, live meetings as well. So all you need to do after enrollment is to take part, get certified. The course runs from the 4th of October till next 10 weeks until early December. And in the end, you can get those certificates that you see on the right side. And it also includes that we don't want the certified BIM managers to be on their own once they complete the course. So we put an effort into organizing the community, BIM manager community. There are regular BIM talks when BIM managers can talk about their experience in general and discuss things with all the other BIM managers. So we hope to build this as a very successful community. It's been going on for a while. So I think it's really good for everyone who gets certified to join these talks and be an active member of the community. And I think this is really it. So I would thank you for your attention and hand it back to Min.
Thank you, Sandor. Absolutely marvelous as normal. Thank you very much for doing that presentation, summarize a lot of information in 1 hour. That's a huge effort. Once again, on behalf of everyone here, I think, and on behalf of BIM Co and BIM Steering Committee, thank you for your contribution for today's presentation. Vâng, thì cái phần nội dung của anh Sandor đã trình bày cho ngày hôm nay thì đã kết thúc rồi ạ. Cái nội dung cuối cùng mà anh ấy có đưa lên slide đấy là cái khóa học chính hãng, khóa học về Bim Manager do Grasshopper tổ chức. Khóa học này thì kéo dài khoảng trong một thời gian là 10 tuần, học online với thời khóa biểu tương đối là dễ chịu, phù hợp với cả thị trường, với cả những người Việt chúng ta, vì là không có cái buổi học nào rơi vào đêm hay gì cả. Thì cũng rất là khuyến khích mọi người tham khảo thêm thông tin về khóa học để mà xem là mình có nên tham gia hay không. Bởi vì cũng như ngay từ đầu anh ấy có nói trong một trong các cái slide của mình, thì BIM nó không phải là một công cụ, và BIM nó là một cái tổ hợp rất là lớn, rất là nhiều quy trình, nhiều lý thuyết, nhiều cách thức thực hiện. Và khi mà nắm được BIM rồi thì chúng ta có thể ứng dụng với rất là nhiều công cụ khác nhau, không nhất thiết phải là phần mềm này thì có thể là phần mềm khác. Cái đặc biệt là cái vai trò của người quản lý BIM, Bim Manager là hết sức quan trọng trong cái quá trình có thể ứng dụng BIM cho bất kỳ một đơn vị, một công ty hay một tổ chức nào. Cái này nó áp dụng trên toàn thế giới, không chỉ riêng ở Việt Nam mình. Thế nên là nếu các anh chị có quan tâm, có nhu cầu để nâng cao trình độ của bản thân, thu thập thêm kiến thức và kỹ năng, thì mọi người có thể hoàn toàn là tham gia cái khóa học đấy. Và cái việc vì là BIM Co và BIM Steering Committee cũng như Grasshopper đã có ký một cái thỏa thuận hợp tác với nhau để hỗ trợ cho việc phát triển BIM ở thị trường Việt Nam. Thế nên là nếu mà các anh chị tham gia cái buổi học, cái webinar ngày hôm nay, có nhu cầu tham gia khóa học của chính hãng thì có thể liên hệ với BIM Co chúng tôi để được hưởng cái mức giảm giá trên cái học phí của khóa học. Thì tuy nhiên là bên cạnh cái việc là tham gia cái khóa học chính hãng đấy, thì tất cả mọi người tham gia ngày hôm nay có thể là vẫn có thể nhận được cái chứng chỉ tham gia cái khóa học mini course này. Khi kết thúc mỗi buổi như này thì chúng tôi sẽ có một số cái câu hỏi tương đối là đơn giản thôi, chủ yếu là để thử nghiệm để xem cái kiến thức mọi người thu thập được qua một cái buổi ngày hôm nay nó được đến bao nhiêu %. Thì mọi người có thể trả lời các câu hỏi đấy và gửi cho chúng tôi để mà có thể nhận được cái chứng chỉ đã hoàn thành cái khóa mini course này. Chứng chỉ sẽ được cấp và có sự xác nhận của hãng Grasshopper. các cái thông tin liên quan đấy thì sẽ được gửi đến tất cả các anh các chị sau buổi học ngày hôm nay, sau cái buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay. Vâng, bây giờ thì bắt đầu đến phần hỏi đáp. Có rất là nhiều câu hỏi ở đây, thì chắc là xin bắt đầu với những câu hỏi bằng tiếng Anh trước, vì anh Sandor hoàn toàn có thể đọc được. Hi Sandor, there is a couple of questions in here. It's in English. So can you just directly answer those first?
Yeah, okay. So okay, can we pass B? Okay, well it's
just
moving
start with
away.
the second one. Just start with the second one first.
Okay. So okay, design, bid, build, type of contract. How could the building main contractor get involved at the beginning of the project? Well, it would be a different project delivery method. So if it really needs to be involved in the beginning, then it should be an integrated delivery, because that's when everyone can work as in a closer collaboration, as in more of like one firm sharing all the risks and the benefits. So in case of a design, bid, and build, I don't think there's much to do, because you do the tendering, you do the bidding, and that's when the contractor can come into the picture.
Okay. I have a question up the top here.
Okay. Architects, friends operating architect studios and starting BIM but use Revit. How can I advise them to use ArchiCAD, as I see it's more suitable for architects? Okay, so well, it depends on what. Okay, so usually when it comes to all these discussions, then we want to know more about how they work. And usually when you consider the workflows, then it turns out what are the pain points, what are the bottlenecks. And, you know, if you can address those issues better with some other solution, then probably you have a bigger chance. So I don't know, if they have issues with teamwork, for example, then definitely they can try ArchiCAD teamwork. If they have issues with the flexibility of the design, then I would say that simpler or easier design is definitely a pro to ArchiCAD. So yeah, I would really look into what are their current workflows, and based on that we could suggest something. Obviously, no one, as I mentioned in the presentation, it's hard for people to change because they've been using things for a long time. So if it was really that wrong, they shouldn't be using it. That's what they think. But it's also you know, there's the fear of change. So like even let's say if they know that something is not perfect, at least they know where it's not perfect, so they can estimate that, okay, maybe now we work this way, and doing a project, I don't know, it takes this amount of time. It could be better, but at least we know that at this amount of time we can definitely finish. If you want to make them change, then all of a sudden there are a lot of factors, so they might, you know, not be able to estimate, are they going to really finish the project, or what happens if they don't finish? So actually this piloting should be a very planned process. So dedicate people who are not under pressure, you know, find a suitable pilot project that is relevant for the company, not too big, maybe it's not too complex. Maybe something that has already been completed, maybe something that is parallelly completed in the traditional way. So there's no extra pressure on the team. You know, if you have to learn a software and in the meantime you have to deliver something for real as well, then that's really a huge pressure. So that is not going to go well. In general terms, I would say what I love about ArchiCAD compared to Revit is that it's just much simpler and easier to learn and easier to use. You have more freedom as a designer, but obviously this is the aspect of someone who's more focused on the design. So that it can be part if you go on later to the construction phase, then definitely I would say that this is still valid, because we can still use ArchiCAD as the backbone of the process, besides the authoring as well. So we have the same kind of solutions to cover the whole workflow and the life cycle. And if the solution is not available by Graphisoft or by Nemetschek, then we rely on OpenBIM and make sure that the connection is seamless. So yeah, I would look into their actual workflows and discuss with them based on that. Yeah, sorry for the long answer.
There's a question say, yes, it's up the top, it's in English. Does Bim Manager have to be an expert on QS or schedule planner when doing 4D or 5D? Can he pass 4D to access or use Bim 5D directly? Does Bim 5D include schedule?
Yeah, so actually, no. I mean, obviously, the more versatile the Bim Manager, the best. But he cannot cover all the aspects. So basically, he should just be responsible for the collaboration part and the coordination between these different parties. So if there is a quantity surveyor, for example, quantity surveyors may not even be using BIM. And many of them, they use manual processes, take 2D drawings. What is important in this case is that the BIM manager is aware that, let's say, the structural engineer takes an IFC file, but the quantity surveyor is going to take a PDF file. Or, for example, if the quantity surveyor is also using BIM tools, then he is also going to take an IFC file, but then we need a different approach, setting up the IFC file for quantity surveyor purposes. So even in many cases, the data that we receive is not directly put into our tool, right? So, for example, specifications. Those who define the specifications may not be able to use ArchiCAD. They don't have ArchiCAD, so they cannot put those specifications into our model. But if they provide us an Excel file, how can we bring this information into our workflow? And actually, this is where the BIM manager has to be involved. So not necessarily creating the actual schedule or operating 4D or 5D time planning or cost planning tools.
Okay. Mời bên ban tổ chức có thể chuyển sang một số câu hỏi. Ví dụ như câu hỏi của anh Hùng ở PECC1, PECC1. Sandor, this is a question from someone who worked in operate an organization PECC1. Xin lỗi, mình không biết chính xác cái này nên không dám dịch. His question is, for national security project, can a common data environment CDE solution for the BIM project use a foreigner product?
I'm not sure I understand the common. How can the common data environment use a foreign product? What is the foreign product in this case?
In this case, for example, if it's the package for the CDE is a foreign developed product, not a Vietnamese made, Vietnamese developed product. For example, if it is possible to use O-Plan BIM Plus or Oracle, I can't remember the name for the CDE.
I mean, any of these. So these should be defined by the owner, and basically there's just a file format. So you don't you don't operate the software within the common data environment. You're just managing the project, and you have all data that is related to the project in that system. So let's say, okay, again, if we just look at ArchiCAD, the IFC file is what we have on the common data environments, but when we need to do some editing, I go back to ArchiCAD, and then later on I update what is the common data environment, right? So in that sense, you can use any of the tools that has a proper connection. Obviously, this is
sorry, Sandor. I think a little bit misunderstanding of the question. I think the main point of the question is it safe? Is it safe to use a foreign software for a national security project in Vietnam?
Yeah, well,
is there a chance of like breaking security, losing the information due to the storage of that information in a software package that is not Vietnamese built and, you know, fully controlled?
Well, I think there's, you know, the chance is always there, so nothing is unbreakable in that sense. Honestly, this has to be checked with the specification of the actual common data environment. So because every solution is acting on their own, right? So I cannot say how secure they are. But obviously, this is a common concern. So not just for national security projects, but obviously everybody wants to have full security. So I don't think that this should be a problem.
Okay, thank you, Sandor. Another question in Vietnamese, but I think it's interesting for a lot of people here. Does IFC file format contains information or only geometry information?
Okay, that's a very good one. So they contain what you want them to contain, but they can the specification of IFC includes both the 3D geometries and the information of the elements. So how you translate what kind of information you want to transfer, that's what you choose when you configure the IFC export, right? Because there could be certain information, some quantity related information, some property type information. So what is really necessary, right? So these can be defined when you do the export of the IFC. What is not there in the IFC is 2D documentation. So you don't export the documentation set with the IFC files. Basically, it's only the model. And if you take the model into another software, then if you need to create a documentation set, then that has to be done in that particular other software. This is usually not an issue because the originator has a different deliverable type anyways than who's receiving it. But if you want to do some quick referencing, then you can also export, for example, DWG files of your documentation set, and then that documentation set can be combined with the 3D model. But by definition in the IFC standard, it's not included to have 2D. So basically, when you take a look at 2D of an IFC, that is really just the model as it is cut. Okay, so you don't have those documentation standards as you usually have in ArchiCAD or Revit when you produce an architectural drawing, for example.
Okay, there's a question directly to you. I think you should read it yourself. The top one.
Yes, could you please give an example of the size of BIM management team in architectural firms? Yeah, well, okay, so there is a BIM manager. If you think of these are typical BIM projects that we participated in as consultants, then it's usually around the people of 5 to 10. So like one team that is handling a project. And obviously you can have multiple of these teams in a company. In many cases, they might not even be working on the same tool. So, these large companies, that's where we had 5 to 10. Maybe in a smaller company, you can have 3 people in a team. It really depends on the project size. And then there could be those people who are connecting these different teams if needed. So that should be the BIM manager, the documentation model manager as well, and the information manager. But the thing is that really depending on the size of the team, the BIM manager can take over these roles as well, right? And the interesting thing is that in many companies, you might not have a dedicated role for these. You just know that someone is doing this. So actually that person is already maybe a documentation manager who's checking the compliance, right, for the standards. So I cannot say an exact number in that sense. What we've seen for large companies is like 5 to 10 people were pretty much more than enough for one large project. But we have service providers with the staff of 40, 50, all, and so it's just that they have a bigger capacity to produce BIM projects. So it really depends on the size.
Perfect, thank you. Here is another English question for you.
Okay, what is the maximum level of BIM modeling? What can we get if we could reach that level? So this one is an interesting one, because you should not define this in the aspect of the overall project, because certain elements needs to be detailed to a higher level, while other elements don't necessarily have to be detailed. And also when you say the level of BIM modeling, this can also say this can also differentiate level of geometry and a level of information, right? So you can put as much information as you want into the elements, and you can make the modeling as detailed as you want. What is the purpose, and is it really needed? So these are the things that have to be defined in the exchange information requirements, and also in the design responsibility matrix. So what is the information that we're going to deliver along with our model?
Thank you, Sandor. Now questions. The role of the BIM management must be able to use tools to create 3D models with geometry data, and also other informations like non-geographic information, like other information for the model, such as in BIM. Does the BIM managers must use all the tools to do it himself?
No. So I think this is related a little bit to one of the previous questions. So obviously, as a BIM authoring tool, since that is the main tool for the practice, right? So whether it's Revit or Archicad, it doesn't really matter. The BIM manager should be the one who is defining the BIM strategy of the company. And in that sense, he has to be good with the tool that the company is going to be using, right? So in that sense, he's not just the manager giving tasks to the others, but he has to set up the standards, he has to set up the workflows, he needs to develop the templates, and he needs to have this whole process tested, documented, and conveyed to everyone else, to communicate it through the trainings and the knowledge bases, guides, all kinds of things. But obviously there is a limitation to a person. So obviously the more they know, the more tools they know, at least the principles of the softwares they need to know, so that they know what to expect from other stakeholders. They know what they can ask for. They know what they can provide if those other stakeholders ask for information, you know, and yeah, so it doesn't have to know everything. It's impossible. But the main authoring tool definitely, and everything around that definitely, and he just needs to manage the collaboration with the other tools. This also includes the model federation. So obviously they would have their own tool, and then he is familiar with that.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, thanks, Sandor. I think there are a couple of questions I would like to ask Mr. Bing from the BIM Steering Committee, because it's a pure Vietnamese situation question. You can take a break.
Anything we might not have time for, let's just collect and answer by email or later.
Yeah. Xin lỗi, anh Bình có ở đây không ạ? Anh Bình.
Dạ có.
Anh Bình ơi, có hai câu hỏi liên quan đến cái tình hình BIM ở Việt Nam, thì không biết anh Bình có thể thay mặt trả lời được không ạ? Ví dụ như là cái câu hỏi ở Việt Nam hiện tại thì triển khai dự án BIM có thể áp dụng những tiêu chuẩn nào, và cái câu về cái bộ ISO 19650 hiện đã có bản tiếng Việt hay chưa?
Dạ vâng, cảm ơn anh Minh. Thì thứ nhất là ở Việt Nam hiện nay thì khi mà triển khai dự án BIM thì Bộ Xây dựng cũng đã có ban hành cái quyết định 347 và 348 về hướng dẫn chung cũng như là hướng dẫn chi tiết áp dụng BIM cho một số loại công trình. Thì các anh chị có thể nghiên cứu những cái hướng dẫn đó, hoặc là cái áp dụng theo ISO 19650. Thì cái bộ ISO 19650 hiện tại thì cũng đã có bản tiếng Anh và cái bản tiếng Việt gọi là dịch sơ bộ của một số nhóm. Tuy nhiên là chưa có cái bản dịch chính thức, hoặc là chưa có cái bản tiêu chuẩn chính thức của bên Tổng cục Tiêu chuẩn Đo lường Chất lượng. Nhưng mà đó cũng là một cái nội dung mà Bộ Xây dựng đang xây dựng và hướng tới là ban hành cái bộ tiêu chuẩn đó. Thì nếu mà anh chị và các bạn nào mà cần cái bản dịch không chính thức đó thì bên phía cơ quan thường trực ban chỉ đạo cũng có thể chia sẻ để tham khảo. Vui lòng gửi email đến địa chỉ contact@bim.gov.vn, thì chúng tôi sẽ gửi. Trong thời gian còn lại của chương trình thì xin mời các anh chị các bạn có thể bật mic lên để đặt câu hỏi với diễn giả Sandor hoặc là với ban tổ chức. Chắc là chương trình có hạn nên là chắc cũng chỉ đặt thêm 2-3 câu hỏi nữa thôi anh Minh nhỉ? Tại vì là
thì thời gian của mình cũng gần hết mất rồi, nên là cũng mong các anh chị nếu có câu hỏi gì có thể đặt câu hỏi trực tiếp với Sandor, có thể bật mic lên và mình có thể đặt câu hỏi trực tiếp ạ. Thì còn một số câu hỏi ở trên này thì bởi vì là cũng xin phép sẽ được trả lời thông qua việc trả lời là offline, sẽ gửi các câu hỏi này cho diễn giả để anh ấy có thể là trả lời sau. Còn bây giờ thì cũng rất là mong có ai đấy, anh chị nào có câu hỏi trực tiếp để hỏi diễn giả, vì từ nãy đến giờ thì chỉ có diễn giả với cả ban tổ chức là nói chuyện với nhau, thì cũng rất là mong có cái sự tham gia của mọi người. Vì những cái dịp như thế này, khi mà có được diễn giả của như anh Sandor là một người rất là nhiều kinh nghiệm ở trong các lĩnh vực để mà có thể trả lời được trực tiếp vào các câu hỏi, thì cũng bên ban tổ chức và bên mình cũng phải rất là mất thời gian để mà lên được, mà có thể hẹn anh ấy một cái ngày cụ thể tham dự như thế này. Thì cũng rất là mong các anh chị nếu có câu hỏi thì chúng ta cũng tranh thủ hỏi luôn diễn giả ở đây.
Anh chị nào có câu hỏi gì nữa không ạ?
Mr. Sandor, I would like to have some question. So
Sure.
Thank for your presentation. And I just study on the BIM and want to know that because there is BIM 4D and BIM 5D, and they talk about like BIM 4D for scheduling management, and BIM for 5D is for cost management. So is it like BIM 5D includes scheduling to manage in there already?
So scheduling would mean different things. Well, because one thing can be the quantity takeoff and schedules for that. That one we do ourselves even without 4D, 5D, right? So if we want to make sure like have object inventories or just quantities of building materials. The 4D, that would be the time planning. So time scheduling. Probably for that you would use a different software than the BIM authoring tool itself. And for the costing, I guess that would also be a different tool, because you can do basic things in the authoring tools, but there you mostly create the geometry, the design, and the documentation. So yeah.
Yes, because when I come up this question, because for example, the quantity, and they also said that they can be taken up from the 3D modeling. It means that in BIM 3D, they also have the quantity take up already. So it come to the 5D to manage the cost during the construction phase. So I guess that the cost will spend to compare with the stage or the procedure of construction execution. So that's why it will be, for my misunderstanding, because in 4D it already had the schedule on there to monitor the construction execution, and then in 5D is they manage the cost during construction, because when monitor the cost in construction, it will be compared with the actual constructions process. So that's why is it necessary before come to BIM 5D? It must be come to 4D first and then
these in that sense, the 3, 4, 5D, they are not sequential, so they can go parallel. So because you use the 3D model during the construction phase as well, if you're making changes, or anyways, the architect is using the 3D differently than the contractor. So the architect just wants to show the design intent, but how the contractor is going to build it is going to be probably quite different because of the technology and all kinds of other aspects. So the contractor would also have his own 3D model, and parallel to it, they do the time planning and they do the costing. So the 3, 4, 5D, they are not sequential. I mean, the 3 and the 5 can work together without the 4 as well. If you mean this kind of that they are dependent on each other. Or I might be misunderstanding something. If that's the case, please, Min, help me out.
Because normally in BIM 3D, they normally use in design phase, and they also use it in construction phase when they want to control the class detection between the MEP system, the structure system where they do the construction on the site, and then it will be related to the schedule and cost estimate, cost controlling. So that's why I still mix up and understand, is it necessary like to come phase by phase from 3D to 4D and then 5D, or just based on the the 3D, and then you can freely to go directly to 5D or 6D.
Yes. You can skip these. Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Anh Sandor thì anh nghĩ vâng, em chỉ xin phép là nói rõ hơn khi anh Sandor một tí, tức là khi anh Sandor là mình không nhất thiết là cứ phải đi lần lượt, tức là 3D lên 4D lên 5D, mà là khi mà mình làm 3D xong là mình đã có thể thực hiện các cái nhiệm vụ mà nằm ở trong cái lĩnh vực mà thuộc về BIM 5D rồi, tức là về cost control rồi time control các thứ. Anh không nhất thiết là cứ phải là làm lần lượt, tức là không phải hoàn thiện 3D rồi mình mới làm đến 4D rồi mình làm đến 5D. Những cái D ở đây nó chỉ là các cái chiều thông tin bổ sung thêm vào trong cái mô hình thôi, nên là mình không nhất thiết là cứ phải chờ để mà làm. Thì ý anh Sandor là tất cả những cái đấy thậm chí là mình có thể làm song song luôn cùng một lúc anh ạ. Okay, Sandor, I already just briefly summarize your question, your answer.
Okay, thanks.
Thì không biết là còn có ai có câu hỏi nữa không ạ?
Dạ, em có câu hỏi ạ.
Yeah, xin mời bạn. Bạn có thể đặt câu hỏi luôn trực tiếp bằng tiếng Anh cho anh Sandor được không? Chắc là mình chỉ còn thời gian cho một câu hỏi nữa thôi.
Dạ, thì em có đặt câu hỏi trên rồi để em lặp lại cái câu hỏi đó. So hello Sandor.
Hey.
Yeah, so my question is it correct to say the ideal process for exchanging and approving information in BIM should require digitizing all legal documents and procedures? But however, electronic signatures have not been widely applied in many fields in Vietnam, and the government document approval process is still like paperwork. So could you advise some information flow management solution in such this condition? Thank you.
Yeah, so the legal part is not about the digitalization, but to have it stated somewhere what is the legal framework. So you don't necessarily have to have it digital, but there should be a document which says that these are the requirements and this is what we mean by wanting BIM. We want BIM because we need information for the asset management. So because of that, we need, product information such as manufacturer, warranty, maintenance dates. Instead of this, if you just say we want BIM and then assuming that people will put in the product info into the elements, that's a wrong approach. So basically what you need is just to have a document somewhere in some form that states that this is your requirement and what happens if someone doesn't fulfill this requirement, who should be delivering this information, right? So it's not about the digitalization itself, but the actual existence of the document.
Yeah, I think
thank you.
Yeah, I think you answered a question correct altogether. Okay, thank you, Sandor. I think the time for our webinar today, it's near the end. It's already 11:20. So I think there are a couple of questions. I will ask the organizer to summarize and send it to you.
Sure.
Yeah, for your answer offline, and we post your answer on some channels later on. So once again, on behalf of everyone today, I think I have to say thank you very much for all your effort, your time to prepare the wonderful slide and answer those questions. Thank you very much, Sandor.
Yes.
And okay, so thưa mọi người thì chắc là cái buổi hội thảo này chúng ta hôm nay là cũng đã đến lúc kết thúc và chúng ta cũng đã đến cái mốc thời điểm 11:20 rồi, cũng là rất là muộn so với cái thời gian ban đầu. Thì cũng để kết thúc, trước khi kết thúc thì mình xin phép được nhắc lại một chút các cái thông tin của cái buổi ngày hôm nay. Thì đây là buổi đầu tiên của một chuỗi 3 buổi hội thảo mà chúng tôi gọi là mini course về các một số cái kiến thức và kỹ năng liên quan đến việc chuẩn bị cho cái vai trò của một người quản lý của một công ty khi mà triển khai BIM vào công ty mình. Thì cái khóa giới thiệu ở trong cái chương trình này thì nó tương đối là ngắn gọn, và các thông tin là chỉ ở mức là hết sức là cô đọng, giới thiệu cái đầu việc là chính. Thì còn để nắm được cái thông tin chi tiết thì có thể là các anh chị có thể, nếu quan tâm thì có thể tham gia cái khóa đào tạo của chính hãng do Grasshopper tổ chức. Các anh chị có thể liên hệ thông tin ở phía ban tổ chức ở ban chỉ đạo BIM quốc gia, hoặc là thông qua công ty VNco ở địa chỉ vnco.vn, hoặc là có thể liên hệ trực tiếp với website của hãng ở cái địa chỉ là learn.graphisoft.com để có thể tìm hiểu thêm thông tin về cái khóa học Bim Manager của Ngoài ra thì cái chương trình này thì khi mà các anh chị tham gia đầy đủ 3 buổi thì cũng sẽ nhận được một cái chứng chỉ đã hoàn thành 3 cái buổi học mini course này. Cái chứng chỉ này cũng có cái sự xác nhận của chính hãng Graphisoft. Để hoàn thành thì có 2 yêu cầu. Thứ nhất là anh chị tham gia vào các cái buổi hội thảo mà chúng tôi sẽ tổ chức. Buổi hôm nay là buổi đầu tiên và chúng ta còn 2 buổi nữa. Buổi thứ hai sẽ sau đây khoảng 2 tuần. Lịch sẽ được thông báo ở trên website của Ban chỉ đạo BIM quốc gia. Và yêu cầu thứ hai để nhận được cái chứng chỉ hoàn thành các cái chương trình này, đấy là tham gia và trả lời cái câu hỏi. Các câu hỏi cũng sẽ được gửi đến các anh chị thông qua các cái phương tiện như là website của ban chỉ đạo hoặc là website của công ty VNco. Vâng, thì các anh chị nếu có nhu cầu nhận được cái chứng chỉ đã hoàn thành khóa học thì vui lòng liên hệ để mà biết được các câu hỏi để có thể trả lời trong thời gian sớm nhất ạ. Vâng, xin trân trọng cảm ơn cái sự có mặt của tất cả các anh chị đã đặt câu hỏi, đã lắng nghe diễn giả Sandor ngày hôm nay. Vâng, thì xin gửi chuyển lại chương trình cho bên anh Bình và ban chỉ đạo BIM quốc gia.
Dạ vâng, rồi cảm ơn anh Minh, cảm ơn tất cả các anh chị đã dành thời gian theo dõi, và chương trình xin phép được tạm dừng ở đây và hẹn gặp lại các anh chị trong cái buổi lần sau. So thank you Sandor very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Most welcome. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for everyone's time. Hope to see you in the next ones and also on the Bim Manager course itself.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye Sandor. Xin chào mọi người.
Thank you. Bye. Bye bye.